the Progressive Era, roughly 2 million Eastern European immigrants entered the United States. This is one of the largest and most influential migrations in history. People left their homes in search for opportunity, but also to get away from poor living conditions. Their migration was driven by the American dream. Some would achieve their dreams while others would struggle to survive, making up the new American lower class. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was located on the top 3 floors of the Ash Building in Manhattan, owned by Max Planck and Isaac Harris. The factory produced women's blouses, or shirtwaists. It employed young immigrant women that came from many different backgrounds. Russian Jews, Italians, Germans, and Hungarians were among the many that came to America. The Triangle employees worked 9 hours a day on weekdays, plus another 7 hours on Saturdays. Child labor was common, the youngest workers being as young as 12. Blank and Harris locked every door except for one, to prevent workers from taking breaks and stealing materials. Before the tragic fire, labor strikes occurred, primarily involving Jewish women who worked in New York shirtwaist factories. The New York Shirtwaist Strike of 1909 was led by Clara Lemlich and supported by the National Women's Trade Union League of America. In 1910, the NWTL settled with the factory owners, gaining improved wages, working conditions, and hours. The end of the strike was followed only a year later by the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, which exposed the poor and dangerous conditions of immigrant women. Samuel Gompers was the head of the American Federation of Labor since its creation in 1886. He worked to secure shorter hours and higher wages on workers. In one of his speeches, he said, "There comes a time when not to strike is but to rivet the chains of slavery upon our wrists. But when you can't get the manufacturers to give you what you want, then strike. And when you strike, then let the manufacturers know that you are on strike." Gompers influenced waste workers. When he ended his speech, the audience roared. Poor laborers lived in tenements. Newspapers and magazines frequently published wrenching portraits of the filth of tenement life. There were more than 100,000 tenement buildings in New York City. Light was limited, and many rooms had no windows at all. Families slept on pallets, chairs, and even on doors that were removed from their hinges. Similar to the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, the Triangle factory workers experienced poor working conditions. At the 8th floor, about 200 employees were finishing work at cutting tables and sewing machines. The factory fire began on the 8th floor at the end of the workday on March 25, 1911 at 4:40 p.m. As the end of the working day neared, Isidore Abramowitz noticed a fire in his scrap bin. Although the source of the fire is unknown, it is assumed that the fire was started by a match or a cigarette butt. The fire rapidly grew because the floor was littered with flammable cotton and fabric.
No union organizers for you, girlie. Not on your life. March 25th, 1911.
Available technology such as sprinkler systems, firewalls, and adequate fire escapes could have suppressed the fire. But since these safety measures were not required by law, they were not installed in the factory. Out of the tragedy came fire prevention legislation, factory inspection laws, workers' compensation acts, and the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. Company owners Max Planck and Isaac Harris were charged with first and second-degree manslaughter. An all-male jury acquitted the 2 owners. The defense argued that the prosecution failed to prove that the owners knew the exit doors were locked at the time of the fire. Harris and Blank paid $25,000 bail and hired one of New York's most expensive lawyers, Max Stoyer. Stoyer argued that the Triangle factory was technically up to fire code. Stoyer used tactics like forcing eyewitnesses to repeat their testimony over and over again, trying to prove that because their witnesses used the same phrases, they were coached and they weren't recalling the testimony from memory. Did the court administrators make the right decision to not jail the owners of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory?